So last week we were talking about suffering and why it is important and it is not optional. And today we're going to keep with that. We're going to talk about a concept called cheap grace. Cheap grace is not a thing that I invented, but it explains, I think, really well in terms what it is that we need to be on guard and worried about. Cheap grace is a concept brought up by a guy named Bonhoeffer. If Protestants had saints, Bonhoeffer would have been the first one, maybe the only one. But, Protestants don't turn people into saints, don't beatify people, and the Catholics don't recognize Lutherans. So there we are. He was the one guy in Nazi Germany who told Hitler and everybody else in Germany, "You're wrong." Because what happened in Germany during the time of World War II is everybody went with the flow. And everybody said, oh, well, whatever the nation's doing must be good, let's do that. And to everybody's dismay, 150 years later, is that many of the churches just went along with what was going on. Bonhoeffer did not. He wrote a lot of books. He had a lot of great thoughts, and one of his most amazing thoughts is this concept of cheap grace. So what is cheap grace? Cheap grace is preaching of forgiveness without repentance. So that means I got to bring it sometimes and make you feel uncomfortable. Cheap grace is baptism without church discipline. So just being baptized and thinking you have somehow an insurance card in your back pocket is not what grace is about. Communion without confession. So you know that you get your salvation, you receive it at the table, but if you don't have confession, if you don't recognize that you need to be forgiven, then you're just going through the motions. Grace without discipleship, grace without the cross, grace without Jesus is grace that is worthless and meaningless. There is a man, God, who came and died on a cross for all of us. And if we don't recognize that, then why do we even bother? Now, we understand that grace isn't earned. We get that, right? That's the very definition of grace. It is a gift, a pure, unadulterated gift from God. This is the biggest thing going on in the New Testament when you read your Bible between Peter and Paul. Peter keeps telling everybody, no, you can't eat this, you can't do this, you have to be like this, you have to get circumcised that, and you have to be Jewish, basically, is what Peter was saying. And Paul is saying, well, no, that's not it at all. You don't need to be Jewish. It doesn't matter if you're slave or free or Jew or Greek or whether you're a man or whether you're a woman. Jesus came for everybody. This idea is called grace, that God came for everybody and it is free. And in the book of Acts, the new Christians who are being formed call this concept, this way of living, the way. The way as in like the road. It's the only road. It's a road. And where does that road go? It goes to the cross. That would be a really good name for a church now that I think about it, the Cross Road. We should look into that one. So, but this idea that there should be one way, and that way is going to entail suffering, is not going to surprise you. At least I hope it doesn't, because you can find it in every single last one of the books of the New Testament. In fact, in our reading today, we had a whole big long list of things that Paul came up with, that you will endure afflictions and hardship, calamities, beating, imprisonment, riots, labor, sleepless nights, hunger, purity, knowledge, patience, kindness, holiness, spirit, genuine love, truthful speech, the power of God, which will be the weapons of your righteousness on your left hand and on your right. In honor, you will be dishonored. You will have ill reputes thrown at you, though you should be in good reputes. You will be among impostors, though you are true, unknown, and yet very well known, dying, and yet see you are living. Whew, okay, but wait, there's more. Because before Paul did that whole long list, this is another list that he was giving. This is just in the book of Corinthians, the second book, by the way, to the Corinthians, because the first one didn't take, so they needed to. Paul says, we are afflicted in every way, but not crushed, perplexed, but not driven to despair, persecuted, but not forsaken, struck down, but not destroyed, always carrying in the body the death of Christ, so that the life of Jesus may also be visible in our bodies. Now that's the thing I want to get at. This is what Paul's talking about. We're going to die. We're going to be burdened. It's going to be difficult. And then when that happens, you can call that Christ's death, because that's the cross you're carrying because of who you are, which is Christians. But then by doing that, you're going to make his death visible to the world. That's how it works. That in doing these hard, difficult things and bearing these burdens, we bring the fruit that the world sees. So as Americans, we've inherited something very special: prosperity. I don't think anybody has to worry about some foreign nation coming in and taking us over. We have a beautiful and a wonderful nation. But are we whole? And we're not going to get into that today, but I'm just going to put that little bug in your ear. Are we whole is going to be the topic for next week. I want to talk this week about our affluence. Because affluence is a wonderful and a horrible thing at the exact same time. We expect life to be easy. In fact, we expect that everybody's life should be easy, and when it isn't, we're appalled, and then that causes us to do stuff, to change our life, hopefully. Life is easy because really, what is the problem in our life? It's not whether or not we are going to eat, it's that it's all around us. And the stuff that's all around us, is so good. In fact, it's so good, it's bad. That's the problem. The problem isn't that we can't get from point A to point B because we're trapped and we're not free. It's that everybody's getting there at the same time we are. If they would just get off the road, I could get to where I'm going. We are assuming in our world today that we will be instantly entertained. And the second we're not, everybody reach for your phone, right? Because there it is. It's right there. It's just as easy. And between me and the interwebs, I can be entertained infinitely. In fact, I plan to. We're going to be taking a bus to Houston. It's like a 16-hour drive with teenagers. Me and my phone are going to be really happy together. We expect everything to be given immediately to us, new and geared specifically for us in abundance so that we can consume it. And when it's not, we disregard it. So I'm sitting in my house, and there's nothing on television. Now, I've got, I don't know how many hundreds of channels, and DVR. So I've got stuff DVR'd. I literally have days. I don't even know. Days. 3, 4 days, like 72 hours worth of television on my TV right now. Nothing's on. So what am I going to do? I'm going to switch over to Netflix, which has like a month worth of television. But look, my remote control has been lost for months. I have kids. Some of you know how this works, right? But they found it. I don't know where it was, but they found it. Now here's my seat. All of 2 feet away on the mantle is the remote control. I'm not going to get up and get that remote control. That's why I got kids. Okay, we laugh, but I know you've been there, right? Where the thing that is, the remote control is made to make your life easier, but now all of a sudden I'm just too lazy to go and get it? Oh, why? Why? Because this is the world we live in. Because we've been programmed that everything should be easy and instantaneous, and it shouldn't cost me anything. Not even a grunt to stand up and reach. That's all I had to do was stand up and reach. Son, you're 6 years old. Get here. Okay, so wait. When's the last time you suffered for your faith? Have you? Have you ever suffered for your faith? Has your faith ever put you in a situation where somebody disdained you, talked behind your back, said things about you, put you at odds with society or the group of people you were in? Maybe for some of you it hasn't. Which means maybe your faith is a commodity, a thing that you enjoy and consume when you want it, and when you don't want it, you don't bother with it. Now, here's a quick test. Here's how you can figure out whether or not your faith is a commodity. You ever watch one of those YouTube videos, and in between the one or the other, it has a commercial? Oh, man, I just wanted to watch this 90-second video, but I got to watch a 30-second commercial. Oh, but thank God, all of a sudden, there's a little skip ad button. Skip ad. And you push it just as quick as you can find it. You're counting down to 5, 4, 3, 2, so you can push that button and get on. I don't need to know another Buick advertisement ever. Please, Jesus, no. If your faith looks like the skip button, because you're waiting to pass through, get on, or get around, your faith is a consumable. It's something that you consume as opposed to partake in. Now, when Paul was talking about, and Jesus talks about this, when every single book of the New Testament talks about suffering, it's talking about cheap grace. Because here's the problem. There can't be a thing of cheap grace. You can't have cheap grace. What I'm trying to say is salvation from God should never be taken lightly. If God has done something, then you need to pay attention to it. And if he's done it for you and everybody else in the world, then the whole world should pay attention to it. And you can't regard something so grand as light, because then you don't regard it as grand. It just becomes light. I'm not rebuking you. I'm not attacking you. I'm not trying to tell you, nah, you have to believe this and think this, otherwise you're going to hell. No, I'm trying to give you a reality of the human experience, which is that if we take something lightly, then we leave it just as equally lightly. I'm trying to remind you of who you are. We are people. We're humans. God wants everyone to have salvation. And so that mission can be accomplished freely. He gives baptism. Freely, he gives us communion. Freely, we can be a part of the world that he has designed so that we can have salvation. But just because it's free, we might easily disregard it. I've got a video on pineapples, of all things.
We don't think we hate cheap things, but we frequently behave as if we rather do. Consider the pineapple. Columbus was the first European to be delighted by its physical grandeur and vibrant sweetness. He brought some back to Europe, but pineapples proved extremely difficult to transport and very costly to cultivate. For a long time, only royalty could afford to eat them. Russia's Catherine the Great was a huge fan, as was Charles II of England. A single fruit in the 17th century sold for today's equivalent of £5,000. The pineapple was so exciting and so loved that in 1761 the 4th Earl of Dunmore built a temple on his Scottish estate in its honour. And Christopher Wren had no hesitation in topping the South Tower of St. Paul's in London with this evidently divine fruit. Then, at the very end of the 19th century, two things changed. Large commercial plantations of pineapples were established in Hawaii, and there were huge advances in steamship technology. Transport costs plummeted and unwittingly transformed the psychology of pineapple eating. Today, you can get a pineapple for around £1.50. It still tastes exactly the same, but now the pineapple is one of the world's least glamorous fruits. It's never served at smart dinner parties, and it would never be carved on top of a major civic building. The pineapple itself hasn't changed, only our attitude to it has. Contemplation of the history of the pineapple suggests a curious overlap between love and economics. When we have to pay a lot for something nice, we appreciate it to the full. Yet, as its price in the market falls, passion has a habit of fading away. Naturally, if the object has no merit to begin with, a high price won't be able to do anything for it. But if it has real virtue and yet a low price, then it's in severe danger of falling into neglect.
Real danger of falling into neglect. This is the natural human condition. When something is free, we value it less. So if our salvation is free, that means that it stands the greatest temptation to be put aside and then had at whenever we feel like it, instead of dictating into our life what we should do. What we should do, says Jesus, is bear fruit. How about pineapples? Okay, but he said that. He literally said that you can tell the tree by its fruit. These are Jesus' words. What does that mean? It says, well, if your faith has meaning, then you're going to have something you can point at. You're going to have something that you can say, here, look. This is what I did. This is what I do. This is who I am. And we have these opportunities. We have this worship team, right? This worship didn't just happen. The band didn't just happen. The table wasn't just set. The communion wasn't just placed. The coffee didn't just happen. That's faith team. That's worship. That's Kathy Mills. She's orchestrated all kinds of leaders who put together that. That's something that you can be a part of. There's other opportunities, right, that you can bear burdens in this congregation. We're looking for people who want to be welcomers, who want to put their energies and efforts of finding people and welcoming them into the church on display every Sunday, who go out and are the Labradors of love, right? You ever find a Labrador that doesn't have an owner? I bet he found you first. Because what happens? These dogs, they go chasing after everybody because they just love everybody, and then they come up and they say hi. Okay, well that's E-team. That's the evangelism team. if you've ever found this congregation to be to your liking, if you happen to have found Jesus here, if you happen to have come to faith here, if you happen to find that church isn't painful, that's not an accident. That happened because there were people who worshiped before you, before this building was even built, who gave money, who put into that offering plate their burden, who took it upon themselves to say, we're going to do something, and we're going to do something not just for ourselves, but for the people outside of this building. First is we're going to build a building, and then we're going to welcome people in here. If you found yourself in this congregation in the last 4 or 5 years since I've been here, then you have people 10 years ago who gave offerings for years and years so that this building could be built. Our biggest danger in America isn't persecution. Thanks be to God. What a wonderful place we live in. But our biggest danger in America is our luxury, where grace is a commodity that we consume like so many other Netflix television shows, or Twinkies, or pizzas, or cars. I want you to relish the opportunities when you find yourself in a class, a Sunday school, where you had to give up something in your life to be there. Or you find yourself in a group, in a small group, and you don't like one of the people in your table, in your group. What a wonderful opportunity to tell Jesus, Jesus, I really don't love her. But I know you do. What a wonderful opportunity to relish bearing fruits for God. These fruits, the Bible calls them works, the book of James calls them works. They don't get you into heaven. This isn't how you have salvation. It's not if you do these things, then you're saved. You are saved by virtue of our Lord Jesus, who bought you with his blood, claimed you in baptism, and continues to renew you at that table of communion. These works, these fruits, they confirm that you already have a place in heaven. Jesus tells us, go. So I tell you, go. Let's bear fruits.